Okay, so I'll go ahead and get started this morning by just officially welcoming all of you guys to Wat Tung. Sawadee Kap. Welcome. Pleased to see all of you guys this morning. What I do on Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday is help people learn the path to enlightenment based on the teachings of the Buddha, using the original teachings of the Buddha. And I'd like to welcome all of you guys to our temple and invite you guys to learn today and do some meditation and ask any and all questions that you like as we go along. And we're also live streaming to other places throughout the world, so there's people joining us online, so welcome to all of you guys as well. And as you guys travel throughout the world, if you guys would like to continue to learn, you can, because we live stream throughout the world in the morning here at the temple, and then I do classes from home in the evening. So no matter what time zone you're in, you should be able to find a class that's available for you. And they're also recorded, so you can watch them after the live class as well. So the teachings of the Buddha are very unique in that it guides you to this enlightened mental state where your mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, stress, anxiety, shyness, resentment. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. You're always in a good mood. You're never in a bad mood anymore by the time your mind gets to enlightenment. And that happens through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So students come to learn in order to understand the teachings of the Buddha so that they can then reflect on those teachings to independently verify them and then practice them in order to transform the mind. The teachings of the Buddha are not believe, and then hope something good happens when you die. Instead, you're learning his teachings now in this life. And then you're not believing those teachings. You're investigating them, examining them. You're starting to reflect on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you practice his teachings in order to transform the mind and uproot these pollutions out of the mind. And then because you're learning now, reflecting now, and practicing the teachings now, you experience the results now in this life. Because you know in situations where you're angry and frustrated and irritated, you know those situations that you're experiencing those types of feelings. And when you experience those same type of situations and your mind is no longer angry or sad or frustrated or any of those other discontent feelings, you'll know that it's these teachings that are leading you to that improved mental state. So as you would like to learn how to get to this enlightened mental state where you can have focus, concentration, clarity of mind, deep memory, you can see your personal and professional relationships will really blossom and they'll improve because you won't have this roughness and harshness in your mind anymore. So you'll be able to reside with all beings harmoniously. And this just requires gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. One of the biggest myths about the Buddha's life is people think that he sat under a tree, he meditated, and he instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. If you understand his teachings through learning through his actual spoken words, he talks about this gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. He says very clearly that he did not get to enlightenment instantly and all of a sudden, that he had to have this gradual training, and it took him 6 years to get to enlightenment. And that's what a Buddha does, is they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. But it's only a Buddha that would be able to do that. Everyone else needs to have teachers and guides to be able to get to enlightenment. So he independently discovered these teachings without the help of any teachers or any guides. Then he devoted the rest of his life to sharing these teachings with countless other people, and countless people got to enlightenment during his lifetime because he taught from the age of 35 to 80, and for 45 years he helped countless people get to enlightenment. And then when he died at the age of 80, he had his teachings preserved in such a way that countless more people could get to enlightenment after his death. So these are the three main criteria that make a Buddha, is that they independently get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They then dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with others, and then they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people can get to enlightenment after their death. So what I'm going to do is start by sharing with you one of his teachings on meditation, because meditation is one of the trainings that we use in order to move the mind to this enlightened mental state. There's other things you would need to know besides just meditation, but meditation is one of the primary trainings. So I'll teach you the primary style of meditation that he used. It's called breathing mindfulness meditation. It's designed to help you develop mindfulness or awareness of mind. It's designed to help you develop concentration or singleness of mind, being able to focus on a single object. And it's also to help you train your mind to let go, because the mind causes the sadness, anger, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings itself. It oftentimes in the unenlightened state, we think that other people are causing us to be angry. We think other people are annoying us. But what you learn in the teachings of the Buddha is how your mind is causing these feelings itself. And because the mind is causing these feelings itself, you can actually eliminate them. And one of the things that you need to learn how to do is train the mind to let go. Because oftentimes what the mind is experiencing in the unenlightened state is you're chasing after certain things. And if you get what you want, you will get pleasant feelings. You'll get happy, excited, or elated if you get what you want. But if you don't get what you want, you will get angry or frustrated or sad or irritated or some other discontent feeling. So you need to be able to train your mind to let go. So we'll talk about this more as we go in our class, and I'll provide you guys an opportunity to ask any and all questions that you like. But first, let me just help you to do meditation, and then we can talk more about it afterwards, after you've actually experienced it. So in terms of meditation, there's 4 positions that we meditate in. We meditate in the seated, lying, standing, or walking positions. And we use these different positions at different times for different reasons. You guys are all sitting on the floor, but we also have chairs that you're welcome to use if you like. Some people even meditate in the lying position or standing or walking. And I teach these different positions at different times because you'll need them at different times, because you're not going to be able to permanently sit on the floor. It's just not possible. Like, for example, I got in a motorbike accident one time and I was hooked up to an IV and I couldn't sit. I couldn't even cross my legs. So I was able to meditate in the lying position because I understood how to do that. So we'll start you off in the seated position since all of you guys are sitting on the floor. But if at any point you feel uncomfortable or you feel pain and you need more cushions or you need a chair or what have you, feel free to get those. And also, since those of you guys that are here, we have a bathroom in the back of the room, the very last door. You're welcome to use that. We even have water here that students provide, so you're welcome to make yourself comfortable as we go throughout our course. So if you're on the floor, you might have a cushion or more underneath your rear. The more you get your hips up in the air, it lessens the angle at your hips, your knees, and your ankles, and this allows the circulation to flow, and it tends to be more comfortable for people. So feel free to have as many cushions as you like. The hands and arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. And if this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But this practice isn't about everybody doing it exactly the same way, because we're all unique individuals and we might find different things to be comfortable. So there's other options for you as well. You could put your palms on your thighs, perhaps, maybe your palms on your knees. Some people like to put their palms up. Again, it's whatever's comfortable for you. You like your lower body to be nice and comfortable and relaxed, not too tight, because if your legs are real tight, you're not going to be able to get the circulation flowing. And the same thing with the hands and the arms. You'd like them to just be relaxed and comfortable. Not painful, but not luxurious. In the middle, nice and comfortable. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be lethargic or complacent. But if you were real rigid, the mind would have a tendency to be overactive and uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be erect, which keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation so that you can actively train the mind. This isn't a time to kind of zone out or go to sleep. The meditation is an active, dedicated, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and you're arising certain wholesome qualities in the mind. And you're doing this in the seated, lying, standing, and walking positions. So this is how you might position the body if you're sitting sitting on the floor. We're ultimately going to start our meditation with some chanting. This chanting was done during the lifetime of the Buddha as a way to commit the teachings to memory. He had his students recite his teachings every 2 weeks because they didn't write things down during his lifetime. They didn't have that technology in that region of the world to write down his teachings. They didn't get written down until after his death. So they would use chanting as a way to recite the teachings orally and commit them to memory. So when I'm doing this chanting, it's not a prayer, it's not worship, it's not any rites or rituals, it's nothing mystical or magical or anything like that. Literally during the lifetime of the Buddha, they just use it to remember his teachings. Now we don't need that because we have books and videos and podcasts and things like that, but we still do it as a way to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you guys would like to see the chanting that I'm doing and even maybe chant along, I have sheets on the table over there. They're laminated sheets that you're welcome to get. You'll see the chants. They're in the Pali language. This is the original language of the teachings of the Buddha. And it even has the English translations on there too. So you'll be able to see what I'm actually chanting in English. Because sometimes when people don't know what the words mean, they might think there's something mystical or magical about them. But if you see the English translations, then you'll know that there's nothing mystical or magical about them. And when you start reading the chants and you see what the chants actually mean, you can see that there's a lot of respect and gratitude and appreciation for the Buddha that is being shared in the chanting. I suspect that the Buddha didn't actually create these chants. It was probably his students, either during his life or after his death, that created these chants, because a Buddha doesn't walk around demanding for people to worship them or respect them. Instead, a Buddha is just going to share teachings that is going to help others to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind's peaceful and joyful permanently. They don't want anything from you. They don't expect anything from you. He just figured out how to get to this enlightened mental state, and then he spent the rest of his life sharing it with other people. And part of that enlightened mental state is to eliminate the ego, the arrogance, the pride, the boastfulness. So a Buddha isn't going to teach people to chant to him in order to honor him and respect him. But if you learned with somebody who didn't want anything from you, and they helped you move from anger and sadness and other discontent feelings to this peaceful and joyful mental state, that your mind is permanently in that state, you'd probably have an enormous amount of gratitude and respect for that person, that he just did it out of the kindness of his heart. He did it with loving kindness and compassion. So I suspect his students created these as a way to show their respect and gratitude that they had for him, helping them to get to this enlightened mental state. So I'm going to start with this chanting and kind of ease us in to meditation. Then when we get into the meditation, I'll be providing a bit of guidance to help you guys understand what to do while we're actually meditating. And then there'll be a period of time where it'll just be quiet. And of course, there'll be an occasional sound with a car or a bird or something like this, but that's all impermanent. As soon as you hear those things, you can just continue to meditate, bring the mind back to the breath. But there'll be a period of time where we'll just all be meditating together. And then after that, we'll come out of the meditation with some chanting, the same exact chants that we use going into the meditation. And then after we meditate, I will start class by just welcoming you guys to ask any and all questions that you like about the Buddha's teachings or any of the things that you've been seeing about Buddhism, either here in Thailand or other places. I'll just answer any and all questions you guys have about meditation or anything else that you'd like to ask questions about. And then if you'd like to learn some more, I can share with you guys more of the teachings of the Buddha. We can go from there. So make yourself comfortable, and if that's on the floor, and for those of you guys at home, if you're in a chair, you might just have your feet flat on the floor or cross at the ankles. It's really up to you, whatever is comfortable for you. And then the same thing with the hands and arms in the upper body. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhaṃ Bhagavaṇaṃ Abhivādayami สวากขาโตมหาเกวตาธัมโมดามังนามาสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโพโตภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. So wherever you get to the next inhale, just use my voice as a reminder to breathe in naturally through the nose, establishing a nice, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through your nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath. Either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Just whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. สัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรภูริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามานุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. So as I mentioned, this is called breathing mindfulness meditation. This is a primary form of training that the Buddha used during his life in order to train his mind to get to the enlightened mental state. So this is a primary form of meditation that we practice in order to train the mind to get to enlightenment. There's other forms of meditation as well that you would need to know, but this is usually the first one that people learn because it helps to solve some of the significant challenges that are in the mind. It's important to understand that this meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. So if you had a bombardment of thoughts during your meditation, this is completely normal, particularly for someone who's just starting out. You might have lots and lots and lots and lots of thoughts. Or you might have had a thought and then you followed it for a period of time and then you realize like a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes, like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating, let me bring my mind back. So if you experienced any of these things, it's completely normal, particularly as you first get started. Even an enlightened being is going to have an occasional thought during meditation. But the difference is that they'll notice the thought right away and then they'll be able to easily bring the mind back to the breath, where in the unenlightened state, you typically have bombardment of thoughts or you indulge in a thought for a period of time before you bring the mind back. So the goal isn't to actually eliminate your thoughts. It's to quiet the mind. It's to still the mind. What you're doing is you're developing mindfulness or awareness of mind so that you can have awareness of what's in your mind. Are there wholesome things there? Are there unwholesome things? There's probably a combination of both because your mind's unenlightened. So you'll experience wholesome things that are in in your mind, you also experience unwholesome things. So when we're in the unenlightened state without understanding the teachings of the Buddha, we will typically go through life without realizing what's going on in our own mind, that we don't really sit with our own mind and kind of look at it and see what's going on there. So you're developing this mindfulness or this awareness of mind to be able to understand what's going on in the mind. You're cultivating that quality of mindfulness in the meditation. And you're also cultivating the quality of concentration, the ability to focus on a single object like the breath. And now you use these qualities in daily life, that when you go through your daily life, you have more awareness of your mind, you have more concentration, and this will be very beneficial for you in your daily life when you have a conversation with your mom or your dad, or you're in a business meeting, or you're just having time with your friends. You can have more awareness of your mind, and you can have more concentration to participate in the relationship. And then when you notice that there's unwholesome things coming into your mind in daily life, you can cut them off and let them go. If you've been training your mind this way in meditation, you can cut them off and let them go. In meditation, we cut off anything that arises because you're trying to train the mind to easily let go. But in daily life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome things that come up. It's kind of like a person who's a professional athlete. They're going to train in the gym in one way, and then they're going to have a sport that might be something completely different to the way that they actually train. So like a pole vaulter, for example, they might train in the gym to do weight training, cardiovascular training, agility training, but when they actually do their sport, they're actually doing pole vaulting. So it's completely different than what they're doing in the gym. Same thing is true for the path to enlightenment, is that you're training your mind in meditation, you're exercising it in one particular way where you're cultivating awareness of mind or mindfulness, you're cultivating concentration, and you're training the mind to easily let go by cutting off anything and everything that arises in the mind, realizing that you will have occasional thoughts. But then in daily life, you practice that awareness of mind, you practice that concentration, and only when unwholesome thoughts arise in your mind, you cut those off. If you have the thought of taking your friend out to lunch or calling your mom, seeing how she's doing, or any number of wholesome things that you might have come up in your mind, go forward. If that's what you'd like to do, follow through with those wholesome things because they're not going to harm anyone. But where you notice unwholesome things that are harmful to other individuals or to yourself, that's what you would like to cut off. So this is the breathing mindfulness meditation, and you'd like to build this up to 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. And this usually takes time for somebody to build this up. You're not going to be able to just snap your fingers and start meditating at that level of frequency and that duration when you first get started. We meditated for about 20 minutes today. So if you felt like this was quite a lot for you, then you'll probably end up meditating 5 or 10 minutes when you first get started. Or if you feel like you could have done more, then okay, that's great. Then you can do more. You can build up to 30 minutes or more. So that frequency of 2 to 3 sessions per day, and for a duration of 30 minutes or more, I've seen some students take 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to that. So you're in no rush. You're in no competition with anybody else. This is your own independent journey to enlightenment. And you seek guidance from a teacher. A teacher's here to help you and guide you along the way, but it's your journey. So you gradually progress, just like you have everything in your life, whether it's learning to speak English or read or write English or ride a bicycle or some job or occupation that you have. It's been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And getting to enlightenment is the same way. It's your own independent journey in life. And it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And a teacher is here to provide you the guidance and the resources that you need in order to make your way to enlightenment, but you'll need to decide to do that work. So what I'm going to do is just open up to any questions that you guys might have. If you have any questions, let me know, whether it's about meditation or any other aspect of the teachings of the Buddha. If you've been traveling around Thailand and looking at various temples and you have questions about things that you're seeing or things that you read about or something somebody told you, you can ask me any and all questions that you like. So if you're here at the temple, we have microphones here in this white bowl right there near the camera. So that way the people online will be able to hear your question. If you guys could use the microphones, don't worry, it won't harm you. There's just a little button on it. You just press the button and you'll talk. We'll hear you here, and then they'll hear you online as well. And for those of you guys online, if you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can put your question in the comment section. and I'll be able to see that and answer your question. For those of you guys in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand as well and ask any questions or follow-up questions that you like. We'll be able to hear you here at the temple. So are there any questions that you guys might have related to the teachings of the Buddha? Try again.
I press the power button, so that's good.
Go.
Are you enlightened yourself already?
So an individual who's enlightened, they won't say that they're actually enlightened. One of the best ways to know that someone's not enlightened is they'll tell you that they're enlightened. So if someone's walking around bragging that they're enlightened, this is the boastfulness, the ego, the arrogance. So you know that that person's not enlightened. In my opinion, a person who is enlightened would be more interested in helping others to understand what it takes to get to that enlightened mental state. Their mind is so peaceful, so calm, serene, and content with joy that they're not interested in bragging, right? They've already dissolved their ego, so they're not going to say those kinds of things. But if you're interested to know if a teacher is enlightened or not, there's other questions you can ask them that they would answer. You can ask them things like, is it possible to eliminate anger and sadness and frustration? Or when is the last time you got angry or frustrated or irritated? They would answer that kind of question. Or you might ask them, is it possible to dissolve the ego? Because if they say yes, then okay, then they understand that it's possible to dissolve the ego. But if they say no, it's not possible, that means they still have an ego. You might ask a teacher, what type of students do you accept and what type of students do you reject? Because a teacher who's enlightened, they would accept everybody and anybody. There's nobody that they wouldn't accept. You can ask a teacher, what types of rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship does it take to get to enlightenment? Because to get to enlightenment, there is no rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship. So you can ask that kind of question. You can ask, how much does it cost to get to enlightenment? Because if somebody says, oh, I've got this menu that, it's $10,000 to get to enlightenment in 1 year, and it's $50,000 to get to enlightenment in 3 months, they're not enlightened, because an individual who's enlightened would have such loving kindness and compassion for other beings that they wouldn't be charging people in order to get to enlightenment, that they would understand that these teachings don't belong to anybody, and we wouldn't charge somebody to get to enlightenment. But there is a practice of generosity that some people choose to make donations, but that should be up to each individual to choose to do that. So a teacher who's enlightened would be interested in removing the obstacles of what it takes for an individual to get access to these teachings. So if somebody put a price on their teachings, then that immediately is going to be an obstacle for some people to be able to get to enlightenment. An enlightened being would be interested in seeing as many people get to enlightenment as possible and removing any and all obstacles that would be in the way for somebody to get to enlightenment. So they wouldn't charge somebody to learn their teachings and get to enlightenment and things like this. So if you'd like to ask any of those questions, you're welcome to, and there's others you might ask as well, but I wouldn't say yes to that type of question. And an individual who's enlightened, they also wouldn't say no, that they're not enlightened, because they would be lying, and an enlightened being isn't going to lie. And another thing you can do is ask a teacher, what is enlightenment? Because if an individual is enlightened, they would be able to explain it very clearly of what it is and how to actually get to that mental state. All right, any other questions you guys have? I think that mic might still be on. If you could just turn it off, or if someone else needs it, you guys can welcome to use it. Yeah, feel free to pass. We have 2 mics there, so you guys can pass them around. Yep.
Thank you for your sharing today. I have first, I have personal questions about myself. When I do meditation, I feel like my breaths are very short. So when I breathe in, it feels like the air can only go down to my chest. I couldn't go any further. And the second problem I have is when I do meditation, I feel like I have a lot of saliva in my mouth. But when I don't do meditation, I don't have this problem. So this is my personal problem.
Okay, so let's discuss those and I'll help you. So with the breath, it's helpful oftentimes to train the breath outside of meditation. So you just do a bit of breath training where you're not actually trying to meditate, you're just working on the breath. And the thing with the breath is you would like your sternum to be up really high and your shoulders to be back. That opens up your chest and allows the lungs to fully expand. And you might just need to sit there and just kind of breathe a bit, like in through the nose, just a nice gradual breath in, kind of working to fill up the lungs fully. And then just work on a nice gradual exhale out through the nose. And you just work with that for a few minutes. And you might just do that and that only, just working with the breath. And then as you get more and more comfortable working with the breath and just breathing and learning how to fully expand and fully exhale, then you might close your eyes and start now focusing the mind on the breath. So you're combining the mind with the breath. So you might need to do some of this breath training outside of meditation or prior to meditation, just kind of leading in for about 5 minutes or so, just working with the breath and getting comfortable with the breath. This is something I had to do as well. And then your other question was about the saliva, right? So if you're noticing that there's saliva in your mouth, believe it or not, this is actually quite helpful because it means your mind is aware of the bodily sensations that are going on in the body. You're starting to become aware of that. This is part of what's called the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you start becoming aware of the bodily sensations in the body. So if you're noticing a certain amount of saliva, just swallow. If that's what you need to do, right? Just swallow. So your mind's becoming aware of what's going on in the body. And this is actually very helpful because one of the things that the Buddha teaches is that before your mind gets angry, before you get frustrated, and any of these other discontent feelings that I talked about at the beginning of the class, there's going to be some bodily sensation. You may or may not notice it now, but if you start paying attention to your life and what you're experiencing, you're going to notice some bodily sensation that's occurring before your mind gets angry, before it gets sad, before it gets frustrated. If you've noticed like tingling in the body rising up through the chest, if you notice a tightening in the chest, if you notice any pain around the heart, maybe a tightening in the throat, some people experience heat in their face or pressure in their skull. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Have you guys experienced this? This is like an early warning system that's telling you that, hey, you're about to get angry. You're about to get frustrated. And what you're doing in meditation, that mindfulness that you're building, the awareness of mind, you're starting to become aware of the bodily sensations. And what the Buddha teaches is that you can cut off and let go of the bodily sensation and preserve your mind. You guard your mind so that your mind doesn't actually experience the anger or the frustration or the irritation. You can cut it off as a bodily sensation and preserve your mind. It's kind of like if you were in a boat going from America to England, for example, and you were in the middle of the ocean, you would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because once the water gets in the boat, you have a real problem to deal with. Right? So once the anger or the frustration or the guilt or the shame or the boredom or loneliness or resentfulness or any other discontent feeling comes into your mind, you've now got a real problem to deal with. So you can catch it as a bodily sensation and cut it off and let it go there. And that would be ideal. You're not going to be able to do that just by me explaining to you hey, this is what you do. This is the gradual training, the gradual practice, and the gradual progress. So as you train your mind in meditation more and more, and you understand this process, which there's more of it to understand than just what I'm sharing with you so far. But if you understand this more and more, you can really retrain the mind. You can rewire the mind where it doesn't base its inner feelings on some condition. And when you notice these bodily sensations occurring, you can cut it off and let it go, and your mind won't become angry. And if you do this enough times, you'll eventually eliminate the condition that's causing the anger to arise in the first place. An enlightened being doesn't actually experience any anger or frustration or sadness. It just doesn't arise in the mind because you've eliminated the conditions that are causing that to arise. So if you're noticing the saliva in your mouth, this is the mind becoming more aware of the bodily sensations, and now you just need to swallow if that's what you need to do.
Thank you. I have one more general question. What's your opinion about being vegetarian, or what's the influence of being vegetarian to the enlightenment?
Sure. So each person needs to decide for themselves how they would like to progress on the path to enlightenment. And the Buddha's teachings are guiding you and helping you understand what that path is. But then each individual needs to make the choices for themselves. What the Buddha is teaching, they're not rules, they're not commandments. He's not trying to convince you to do anything particular. He's showing you the cause and effect, or the action and result. He's showing you the results of your decisions, that it leads to either wholesome results if you make wise decisions, and if you make unwise decisions, it's going to produce an unwholesome result. So what he teaches is to have loving kindness and compassion for all beings, including animals and other beings. So loving kindness is this active goodwill, or this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, where you're not judging other beings, you just have this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And then there's compassion, which is concern for the misfortune of others. So if you cultivate this in the mind, which there's meditation techniques and other teachings that he shares to cultivate loving kindness and compassion in your mind, which these are essentially the opposite of like hate and anger and frustration. And by the time you fully cultivate loving kindness and compassion, you will have loving kindness and compassion for all beings in the world. And you can see that if you're eating another being, it's hard to have loving kindness and compassion for that being if you're actually eating another being, because it had to be killed in order for you to be able to ingest that. But for such a long time, human beings have been eating animals. So our body and our mind a lot of times is attached to this, and it's kind of craving this potentially. So you can see that nowadays humans eating animals, we've caused a lot of harm in the world, that our environment has been affected, even our own body, that we're experiencing more sicknesses and illnesses than we otherwise would if we were eating a plant-based food supply. So the teachings of the Buddha isn't about everybody agreeing to one particular thing or believing anything. It's about seeing this cause and effect, that if we choose to kill animals and eat animals, it's going to cause us harm as well. It's going to cause harm to the physical body through sickness and things like this, and it's going to cause harm to the environment. They've actually done research, and they've taken wild fish out of very clean streams in places like America that are supposed to be very clean streams, and they tested the flesh, and they found like 80 or 90 different substances in the flesh of the fish. Things like cocaine, things like antidepressants and other psychotic medications. And this is because human beings, we've been flushing this stuff into the water table through our toilets and other ways of polluting the water. So now that fish that's supposed to be a wild salmon that we might buy at the supermarket, not only are you ingesting the meat, which causes more inflammation and other sickness in the body, but you're ingesting the cocaine and the antidepressants and the other substances and drugs and toxins. Even farmed animals, they're getting antibiotics, they're getting toxins and all kinds of other things into their flesh. So when you're eating flesh, you're eating all of those things, and it's affecting the body and it's affecting your mind. So the way the teachings of the Buddha are is that they're independently verifiable. So if you choose to move to a plant-based food supply, I would suggest that you do that gradually, slowly but surely, to allow your body and your mind to adjust, and so that you can find other food suppliers to be able to provide you the food that you need. But because his teachings are independently verifiable, as you move to a plant-based food supply, you will see less sickness in the body, and you will see more clarity in your mind, because you're not ingesting those drugs and hormones and toxins that are in the flesh of the animal. So I would suggest that anybody who's interested in improving the climate and the environment, interested in improving their own health, that they consider moving from a meat-based diet over to a food that is based in plants, and that food supply will be more sustaining for them and produce more health, and they'll see a lot more improvements. And it's interesting because if you do research about human beings, is we were actually plant-based eaters at one time. We weren't always eating meat the way that we do now. And you can see through history that scientists show us that human beings at one time, we ate exclusively plants. But we became so populous that we ran out of plants in the forest, because we mainly dwelled in the forest as we were first coming into the planet. And when we were in the forest, we ran out of plants. So we started to see that animals like lions and tigers and things like this were killing animals, and they were eating the flesh of the animals. So we started being scavengers, where we would run away the other animals, and we would take over their hunt, and then we would eat their hunt. And then we became so populous through that we then needed to learn how to hunt ourselves, and we started doing organized hunting. And this is what scientists tell us was the evolution of human beings. But I don't encourage people to not believe anybody. You shouldn't just believe what people tell you. So you can look for independent verification. Were human beings plant-based eaters? And you can see this through your own teeth. If you look at your teeth are fairly flat. And if you look at animals that eat grains and grasses and things like this, their teeth are very flat. And if you look at animals that tend to eat meat, they have very sharp teeth that rip and tear and tear meat. So if you look at our teeth are much more like a plant-based eater than a being that eats flesh and eats animals. So you can see that at one time, human beings were plant-based eaters, and now more and more people are moving to plant-based foods. And if you would like to do that, you're welcome to do that. No one's going to force you to do it. Nobody's going to control you to do it. Nobody's going to tell you to do it. But you're going to see more improvement in the results of your health, your physical health, and the environment as well. And as more and more people choose to do this, we'll experience better results in the world. But for each individual to choose to do that, it's a personal choice for each individual. There shouldn't be a situation where somebody's telling you to do it or forcing you to do it. And as you're cultivating more and more loving kindness and compassion in your mind, you might choose to do that at any particular time. So I eat all plants, but of course at one time I ate flesh and ate animal meat. But in the last 5-6 years or so, I moved to a plant-based food supply in 2018. And then I've noticed significant improvement in the physical health and mental health as a result of that. And you can experience that too if you choose to move to that type of food supply. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Yes, you're welcome. Pleased to help you. Is there anyone else here or online that would like to ask any questions? Okay, so we have some questions coming in on YouTube here. B, you're saying it would be wonderful if I could post the chanting and translations for those online so you can follow along. You can get that from our website. If you go to buddhadailywisdom.com, under the free books, there's at the bottom, not only do I have all the books available for free that you can download, you can print, or you can order printed versions on Amazon, or you can get printed versions here, but these one-page chanting sheets that I have here at the temple that is on the website as well, you can print that out, and it's just front and back. You can also find it in the first volume of the book series that I share. There in chapter 11, you'll see the chants there with the translation, so you can use that if you like. And it says, B's asking, please tell us why you hold your hands in the prayer position when chanting. This is a position of respect. So here in Thailand, when we greet each other, it's called a wai. You're actually waiing somebody. It's a way of showing respect. I suspect that people invented this along the way because at one time Thai people were in different kingdoms and different tribes, and if you're coming in contact with people who are from a different tribe and they actually spoke different languages, now in Thailand they have a main language, but at one time they were different kingdoms, different tribes, they spoke different language. And if you're coming in contact with a people from a different tribe, this is a nice way to show them like, hey, we don't have anything in our hands, we mean you no harm, and this is something you can do from really far away. So we continue to do this as a way of showing respect and gratitude. It also promotes humbleness in your own mind because you're bowing your head. So when I'm chanting, I'm showing respect to Gotama Buddha, even though he's dead, he's gone, he's never coming back, right? So this is a way for me to cultivate that humbleness, that appreciation, that gratitude for Gotama Buddha and all the people that passed these teachings down for 2,500 years. Here we are 2,500 years after the death of the Buddha, and we're still talking about his teachings. And the only reason why is because people have been handing these teachings down for countless generations to the point where now they're reaching you. So I have an enormous amount of respect and gratitude for the Buddha himself, but also all those people that handed the teachings down throughout all these years, preserving them and protecting them to the point where now they can reach you. I use the why to say thank you. Is this the same thing? Yes, it's the same thing, B. You can do that why. It seems ritualistic to me. Should we ideally be, okay, that's a different question. Yeah, there's no rituals in the teachings of the Buddha. There's no rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship. Even though you might visit Buddhist temples and you see people that are doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, that's not what the Buddha taught. And now, 2,500 years later, there's people that have learned things that have been drastically changed from the lifetime of the Buddha. So you can go into temples, very famous temples, and you will see people doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. But this isn't what the Buddha actually taught. He taught to train your mind and cultivate wisdom. That's how you get to enlightenment, not through rituals and worship. So anything you see that I'm doing, there's no rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship involved at all. This is just for gratitude and respect. And then you're asking also, B, should we ideally be belly breathing during meditation? I don't breathe into the belly because the air is coming into the lungs, right? So you're really working to expand the lungs and extract and compress the lungs. So that's why having the sternum up in the shoulders back, that allows the lungs to fully expand. So you're breathing in through the nose, expanding, and then breathing out through the nose. And for some people, there's people in the world that don't have a nose or they can't breathe through their nose. They might breathe through their mouth. There's even people who have a little surgery to breathe through their throat, right? So there's a breath. If there's a being that's alive, a human being, there's going to be air, there's going to be breath. So you focus on either the sound of the breath or the sensation of air that's coming in to the body. And let's see, what else are you asking here? You're saying plants are also polluted. Yes, so there's no perfect solution, right? Like if we say, okay, we're going to wait for the perfect solution before we move off of animal-based foods and move to plants, we're going to wait until there's a perfect solution for that to occur, then we're not budging, we're not moving, right? So oftentimes what you do is you implement the very best solution that's going to cause the least amount of harm, and then more and more as the world improves, then we can improve more and more, right? So at one time, I noticed that here in Thailand, the bread that they sell in the stores, that of course it has eggs in it. And now my son and I, we went to the store the other day and we noticed that there's some bread manufacturers, some companies that are making bread without eggs now. And they have it right on their the package, right? So, and it tastes actually exactly the same as the bread with eggs. So more and more, the world is starting to understand that by us relying on animals in this way, it's really harmful to the animals. It's really harmful to our environment. But yeah, there's still some people who harvest plants that are using poisons and pesticides. So we don't have a perfect solution right now, but we move to what is the least amount of harm that we can cause, and eating a plant-based food supply is that. But of course, there's going to be some beings who are in the world that as they move to a plant-based food supply, they're really struggling because the body and the mind is so dependent on something that's in the meat. And you might need to use some supplements, you might need to use other things. But if we wait for a perfect solution and we don't budge until that time, then people aren't necessarily motivated to improve. So more and more, the companies and corporations in the world are seeing that human beings are moving to plant-based food supplies that don't rely on animals. So now more and more companies are incentivized to clean up their practice and clean up what they're doing. So as we choose to do that, we'll see more and more companies and corporations that are interested in providing us the things that we need and the things that we're choosing. But again, for each individual, it's a personal choice. Be aware that oftentimes the unenlightened mind will try to justify what it's doing. So we might come up with all these reasons why we need to stay with one particular unwise decision or another, where it's sometimes a challenge for the unenlightened mind to choose to let go of something and move to something better. So sometimes the unenlightened mind can justify its unwise decisions or attempt to justify its unwise decisions. So you can choose for yourself to move to plants if you like. If you choose to stay on meat, okay, you choose to stay on meat, you'll experience the results of that. But if you would like to see the truth for yourself, you can move to plants and you'll be able to see the improvement in the health of the body, in the health of your own mind, and then slowly but surely the health of the world as well. And then it looks like we have one more thing here from B. You missed the comment about plants having feelings too. See above. I disagree that plants have feelings, that there's 5 aggregates that the Buddha taught that a living being is going to have. This is how he determines whether a being is a living being or not. That a living being is going to have physical form, which is, you can see for yourself, you have physical form. A living being is going to have feelings, which are things like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, euphoria, sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, these kinds of things. Then a living being is going to have perceptions. This is the 3rd aggregate. What a perception is the views and opinions you have about the world. You look out at the world and you have certain views and certain opinions about the world itself. These are called perceptions that an individual would have. The 4th thing that a living being has is called volitional formations, which are choices and decisions, that you can make choices and decisions. And then the 5th aggregate, or the 5th collection, or the 5th element is called a consciousness, a mind itself. So you can learn what I just shared, but then you can independently reflect on it and see for yourself, because you know that you're a living being. So you know you have physical form, you have feelings, you have perceptions, you have volitional formations, which are choices and decisions, and you have a consciousness. But then you can look at other things that we know that aren't a living being, like this chair that I'm sitting in. This chair has physical form, but it doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have perceptions. It doesn't have certain views and opinions about the world. It doesn't have volitional formations. It can't make choices and decisions. It can't choose to pick itself up, walk down the street, and put itself somewhere else. And it doesn't have a consciousness or a mind. And this is the same thing that's true about a plant, that it doesn't have all 5 aggregates. It has physical form, but it doesn't have the other 3. And that's because it doesn't have a consciousness. It doesn't have a mind itself. So that's why it doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have perceptions. It doesn't have volitional formations. A plant can't choose to pick itself up, walk down the street, and replant itself, because it doesn't have a consciousness. So while some people might say that plants have feelings, I would disagree with that, because we don't see any indication of that. Okay, it looks like that's all your questions there, B. Okay, you're saying something here also about teeth. So I would disagree with what you're saying here about teeth, B, that our teeth are actually very flat. If you look at like a lion or a bear or a tiger or something like this, that their teeth are very sharp and able to grab onto things, tear and rip. We can't do that with our teeth. We have one particular, sharp teeth that we call a canine, but otherwise our teeth are all very, very flat, much like a horse or a cow or any of these other animals that you see that eat plant-based foods. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions here or online or here at the temple. There's usually a topic that I will teach in each individual class to be able to help you guys learn the teachings of the Buddha. This particular class, it's part of what we call our group learning program, and it's a 7-month program where we start with this book of the book series, the very first book. It's called Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. And each Sunday I give a talk on one of the individual chapters, and we go chapter by chapter, and it takes 7 months to go through the whole book over a series of Sundays. And then on Wednesdays, I usually teach meditation and I teach chanting as a way to help students to be able to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha. And this particular class was to be the 3rd part of a 4-part series on Buddhist chanting, where I've been teaching students how to do Buddhist chanting. Some of you guys have learned with me before. I see some of you guys that have learned. Most of you guys are brand new. You've never learned Buddhist chanting with me before. So if you guys would like to learn Buddhist chanting, I will teach it to you and help you guys learn it. If not, and you guys are interested to either learn something else, or if you have something else you would like to do, you're welcome to come and go as you please. It's your decision whether you'd like to to be here or not. But because I'm here, because you're here, and perhaps you came to learn something, I will just see what it is that you guys might be interested to learn. If it's something about meditation, or if it's something about the path to enlightenment. If you have other questions, you're welcome to ask any and all questions. If you'd like me to share something with you about what you might need to learn in order to progress on the path to enlightenment, if you're curious about what enlightenment is, or any of these other topics that you might like to discuss, we can talk about anything and everything that you like.
Hi, I might be going ahead of myself. In the beginning of the class, you mentioned about different types of meditation, and I'm really going ahead of myself, but I'm kind of interested in the meditation while walking. Could you give me a brief introduction of it by any chance?
Sure. Walking meditation?
Yes.
Sure. So walking meditation is breathing mindfulness meditation. It's the same goals that you're working to develop mindfulness or awareness of mind. You're working to develop concentration, and you're training the mind to easily let go. But you're doing it in the walking position, which is really great if you're noticing in the seated position that you're falling asleep and you're having difficulties in meditation, you're falling asleep. Walking position is really good to kind of keep the mind invigorated and active. It's also really good if you're noticing that your mind is overactive or uptight, and the last thing you're thinking about is like sitting down and being still. There might be times where you have a lot of activity in the mind, and like the last thing in your mind is like being in one place. You kind of need to move. So meditation in the walking position is really helpful for that. The way that we do it is we stand up, we grip our wrist just lightly around the wrist, or you can put your hands to the side, or you can put them in the back. It's really up to you, whatever is most comfortable. And then when you walk, it's very intentional walking. It's not like you're walking down the street or you're walking to your friend's house or something like that. Instead, you put your foot out flat on the floor, and then you transition your weight. You put your next foot out, and then you transition your weight. Let me see if I can do it. I've never done it while I was live streaming. Let me see if I can do it. And I don't know you guys online, if you guys are going to be able to see me 100%, but I will show you guys here at the temple so you can see it. Can I see the mic? Okay, so I'm going to use this mic so those of you guys online, even if you can't see my feet, you can at least hear the way that I'm teaching this. So normally I would grip my hands in front, on the side, or in the back. So it would look like this. Okay. So once I have my hands, let me step into the camera. So I would go like that, right? Okay. So once I have my hands in the appropriate place, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my foot out flat, and then I'm going to transfer the weight. Then I'm going to put my foot out flat, and then I'm going to transfer the weight. And what I'm doing with the eyes is you would be looking about 3 feet in front of you, or 1 meter in front of you. And instead of focusing on your breath, you're focused through your eyes. You're not looking really far in front of you. You're not looking to the side. You're not looking to the back. You're just looking 3 feet or 1 meter in front of you, fixating your mind through the eyes. So let me do a little bit of this, and you kind of see the flow. And I usually do it in a counterclockwise circle. And this is important if you understand this Dhamma wheel here that I have. This Dhamma wheel, it represents the teachings of the Buddha, because during his lifetime, even though they didn't write anything down, they used symbols like this in order to remind people of his teachings. So if you learned with the Buddha, you would know what this symbol means. And what it means is it's reminding you of the cycle of rebirth. This circle is reminding you about the cycle that each being is stuck in, this continuous cycle of rebirth until you escape it through the path to enlightenment. And the path to enlightenment is represented by these 8 individual spokes. This is the eightfold path. This is the way to escape the discontent feelings and the unenlightened mind, and the cycle of rebirth is through learning and practicing the eightfold path. And each one of these spokes represent the teaching of the Buddha. And when a Buddha awakens to enlightenment, it's said that they turn this Dhamma wheel. It's on the flat part of their head where the skull and the back of the skull meet, there's a flat spot. And a Buddha is said to turn this Dhamma wheel. It's not a physical thing that's there. It's kind of a figurative thing. And they turn this Dhamma wheel counterclockwise. And this is essentially a symbol of all of humanity stepping forward. It's like civilization entering into a new era. Because when a Buddha awakens from the unenlightened state to enlightenment, they have deep, profound wisdom of what it takes to get to enlightenment. So a Buddha existing in the world is like the best thing for all of humanity, because now countless people can learn the wisdom of what it takes to get to enlightenment, because their wisdom is very deep and very profound. So this Dhamma wheel, it turns in a counterclockwise position. So when I do walking meditation, I do it in a counterclockwise position to remind people about this Dhamma wheel turning in a counterclockwise position. So let me show you guys how this looks. So I would normally do that in a circle. And what you're essentially doing, let me switch over to this mic. I think the batteries on this one are running out, but let me give you that. Here's another one if the batteries are running out. What this is doing, again, is it's helping you to develop that mindfulness or awareness of mind and concentration and train the mind to easily let go. But one of the ways to think about it is that if you had a piece of wood and you had a steel rod and you rub that steel back and forth on the wood, over time, there would be a groove in this wood, and the steel wouldn't be able to pop out of the wood because the steel has made this groove. Well, your mind is essentially doing this, that in the unenlightened state, you haven't created this groove yet for the mind to reside in the present moment with peacefulness and joy. So when you first start meditating, when you first start learning the path to enlightenment, your mind will kind of bounce around in meditation because you don't have the groove yet. So the mind will kind of bounce around. But the more that you go back and forth with this steel and it gets deeper and deeper into the groove, it's harder and harder for the mind to pop out. And when it does pop out, you'll notice it because you know what it feels like to be in the middle and in that groove. So when you're out of the groove, you'll know it and you'll be able to pull the mind back. So as you train your mind in meditation with walking meditation and all these other forms of meditation, you get more and more familiar with where that middle is and what it feels like. And when the mind isn't in that groove, you'll know it in daily life, not just in meditation, but in daily life. You'll notice like, whoa, I feel really stressed here. This doesn't feel good. And you'll learn how to bring the mind back to this peace and this joy. Over time, you'll get longer and longer periods of peacefulness and joy in the mind, where the mind will just always be peaceful and always be joyful. And it's through the meditation that's going to help you to discover where that middle is and create that groove for yourself so that you can notice that in meditation. And then when you're outside of meditation and your mind moves out of that groove, you'll notice that sooner and sooner and be able to bring the mind back. So this meditation is really helpful for that, because as you do it, it's like a clock. If you remember the old time clocks, like tick, tock, right? So when you're doing this meditation, you're doing flat, transfer, flat, transfer, flat, transfer. And over time, you do that for 20, 30 minutes, upwards of 30 minutes, your mind will almost get like in this trance where you'll feel like really firm and stable in the middle. And when your mind is out of that, whether you're in meditation or in daily life, you'll notice it. You'll be like, oh, the mind's not calm. It's not peaceful. Let me bring it back to what I experienced during the meditation. Yes, you're welcome. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, so B's asking a question about chanting. She says, how do you choose the tone of voice when chanting? So it's just something that you learn through the ear, that when you're chanting, you'll know that it's the certain tone. So Arahang Samma. These are just tones that you learn through hearing it over and over. So you can use the recordings that I have online, or you can hear me chanting as we meditate different times. And as you pick up from that, you'll be able to hear the tone repetitively and then get more and more comfortable with hearing it and then replicating it for yourself. But of course, everybody has a little bit different tone because our voices are different. Men tend to have a deeper tone, women tend to have a higher tone, but all together, when people are chanting as a group, it can really harmonize and sound really beautiful together. Do you guys have any other questions here at the temple? Okay. So what I'll do then is I'll just, oh yes ma'am, if you could use the mic, that would be great.
Do you have a good advice for a beginner to bring your mind back while you meditate?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, do you have a good advice to bring your mind back if the mind is going away, far away?
Yes. So what you can do is you can kind of talk to the mind a bit. This isn't something you'll do long term, but especially when you first get started, you might notice that your mind is off the breath. It's following a thought. You're trying to bring it back, but it just won't come back. So you can kind of talk to the mind. You can say, let it go. Let it go. You can kind of coax it a little bit. If you do this in meditation and then also outside of meditation, you'll find that your meditation will be more beneficial because outside of meditation, you're doing the same thing. So what we often do in the unenlightened state is we have rapid thoughts and we kind of follow things rapidly. So some people call this multitasking, but you're not actually multitasking. Your mind's doing one thing for like 3 seconds, another thing for 5 seconds, another thing for 8 seconds, and the mind's rapidly cycling from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. And as your mind's doing this, it gets used to just rapidly cycling and having all these different thoughts. So right now, since your mind hasn't been trained in meditation, you will have various thoughts. And then what you would like to do is tell the mind in meditation, let it go. Let it go, and come back to the breath. But then in daily life, you would like to also be training the mind to do just one thing at a time. Whereas if you're talking on the phone, watching TV, eating a sandwich, your mind's getting used to rapidly cycling, and that's what it's going to do in meditation too. So in daily life, if you can practice singleness of mind, where you're doing just one thing at a time, and anytime you notice that your mind's trying to run away from you, bring it back. So like if you're in a conversation with somebody, or like right now you're listening to my voice, if you notice that your mind wanders and daydreams, you can cut that off and say, let it go, and come back. And now more and more you get that groove that I was just talking about. Your mind gets used to being in the middle, and now it'll tend to stay there more and more regularly for longer and longer periods of time. So the combination of your meditation and combination of practicing singleness of mind in daily life, you'll get more and more concentration. The mind will be more focused. But there's other teachings that you need as well. That's what the Eightfold Path is, that you need to know each individual factor. And this is something that I teach as part of all of our programs, our foundational programs. I'm teaching this Eightfold Path because that's the core central teaching of the Buddha that is going to teach you how to train your mind to get to the enlightened mental state. And you guys are welcome to attend those courses live here at the temple or through the live stream. We also have it in our books, have it on videos that are recorded, podcasts. There's ways for you guys to learn this content. If you're interested and have a sincere interest in learning how to train your mind to get to enlightenment, the resources are here and available for you, all at no cost. You would just have to decide that this is something that you would like to do and gradually work towards training your mind. And this is one of the things that you can do in addition to meditating, is practice singleness of mind in daily life. Mm-hmm. All right, looks like Max has a question here. Why is ego a big topic? Is ego selfishness? So ego is the arrogance, the boastfulness, the mind measuring and comparing, putting yourself above people and below people. And this is going to essentially cause you difficulties. It's something that comes from our existences in our animal world that all of us have been animals at different times, and now being in the human realm, the mind retains that consciousness. And in the animal world, we have this pecking order where there's an alpha male, alpha female, and there's people that aren't. There's a matriarch of our herd of elephants, and we need to have this in our animal world because it helps us to survive. But in the human world, it actually works against us, because if we put ourselves above people and below people, we'll tend to talk down to people with hostility and aggression. And when we put ourselves below people, we will tend to be uncalm and shaken up when we're around people that we think are so high above us. And in order for us to put people above us or below us, there has to be judgment where you're judging people. And this is detrimental to your mind. It's harmful to your mind. So you would like to get to the point where you're not judging other people and putting people above you or below you. In this way, your mind can be peaceful and joyful, and you can relate to all people harmoniously. Whereas if you're talking down to some people and you're talking up to other people, your mind can't be peaceful and joyful. So you would like to get to the point where you dissolve the ego and you eliminate the ego. And that's a big part of the path to enlightenment. And in this first book, volume 1, I dedicate an entire chapter to dissolving the ego. It's chapter 16, and you learn about what the ego is, and then techniques of how to eliminate it and how to dissolve it. It's not selfishness necessarily, although someone who has an ego will tend to be self-centered and be very selfish, but the ego by itself isn't what's necessarily causing the selfishness. Instead, what's causing the selfishness is what we call central desire. This is one of the pollutions that are in the mind, where the mind is longing and yearning for certain pleasures and certain pleasant things. And because of that, the mind has craving, desire, attachment, or this longing and yearning, and that's what produces the selfishness. So if you're noticing selfishness, you can practice generosity, where you're practicing giving and sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources more than is strictly required in any given situation, without any expectation of anything in return. This is the way to train the mind to eliminate selfishness, is you give and you share your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources without any expectation of anything in return. This will ultimately help you to eliminate central desire, but then you're going to need to do work on the ego as well, which is in volume 1, chapter 16, and you can get those resources from our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions here. So what I'll do then is just end class by thanking all of you guys for joining. I appreciate that you've decided today is a day that you'd like to learn the teachings of the Buddha. I'm here on Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturdays helping people to learn the teachings of the Buddha. And then I have courses Monday through Friday at different times. You can see the schedule on our bulletin board here at the temple. Also on our website, we have a calendar view where you can see all the different times that there's courses and retreats going on. These are all available to you at no cost, whether you're here at the temple or you'd like to join by live stream or by Zoom. You can join any of these classes, courses, and retreats as we teach them. There's a fair amount of them that are taught online, and some of them, of course, are just taught here, but you can learn these online as well. All the resources are available for you. You can even get personal guidance, because sometimes students are learning in classes, but then they need to meet with their teacher one-on-one to talk about certain personal things that they've got going on. So you have that option available to you as well. Whether you're here at the temple or you would like to schedule something while you're traveling, you can schedule online, and then we meet in Zoom one-on-one, and I'll be able to help you. So thank you all for joining. If you would like to ask any questions, I'm going to finish up the class now, but then maybe we can talk privately if you would like to come up after class. So I'd like to thank all of you guys online and welcome you to come back and to learn in any of our future classes. So have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee-khap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.